Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Casual Fridays podcast, where we talk about bringing mindfulness and compassion and empathy and kindness and all kinds of beautiful skills that surround what we know as soft skills, and we bring these into the workplace. I'm really excited to be here with you. My name is Art Burns, so let's talk about some self-care today. All right. I hope that, first of all, I hope that you already have a self-care sort of mission for yourself. And if you don't, it's okay, because that's what we're here to talk about. But even if you do, I want you to hear what we have to say here, because maybe there's some sort of aspects of self-care that maybe what I'm going to say today helps you to approach a little bit differently and maybe with a little bit more benefit to you. And as we practice self-care for ourselves, we benefit everyone else around us. And so this is really the important, really important, one of the most important reasons, I should say, to bring self-care into our lives, especially as it relates to our work. All right. Now, I was talking to someone the other day. Last summer I did this wonderful 12-week course where I taught a group at an organization called Catholic Charities of Kansas City, which is a nonprofit organization in Kansas City where they help people to, people who can't pay rent and can't afford utility bills and stuff like this. It's a charity that helps, people in need, right? And I was so honored, and it was so wonderful. I spent 12 weeks with these folks, and, once a week we're on it, and it was done remotely. I wasn't in Kansas City. I'm in Colorado and Denver. And so they stayed in Kansas City. I stayed in Denver, and we did it remotely via Zoom. And it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, And so, so I've been talking to some of those folks and, kind of keeping in touch. And we from time to time, I, pick their brains a little bit about like, what is it like, to be in a nonprofit, because a nonprofit really does have some very specific challenges. Just by the nature of being a nonprofit, there are specific challenges involved, especially when it comes to self-care. Now, before I go any further, though, I want to let you all know that if you don't work for a nonprofit, you still should listen to this, because this is still going to be very valuable information for you. Because even in the for-profit sector, okay, and I think more and more now, I remember when I left the corporate world back in 2009, it had already changed a lot. I remember a few years before that, it was unthinkable that an agency, an advertising agency would be fully operational every Friday of the summer. Like everybody took off like almost all day on Fridays, back in like the, late 90s, early 2000s. But by 2008, that was unheard of now, right? And so I'm sure that progression has continued, so that what I'm saying is that even for people in for-profit industries, self-care is probably becoming more and more, or I should say the capacity for self-care is becoming more and more elusive, as it has always been for nonprofits, right? Because the thing about nonprofits specifically, right, is that they're always, and this also happens in capitalism, right? But with nonprofits specifically, there's always a challenge in funding, right? That's always the thing, right? You're always working with the limited budgets that you have, and therefore you have limited resources in terms of people and services and all that kind of stuff. So people wind up wearing different hats as they're going through their careers in the nonprofit sector. And this is all stuff that I'm learning through these folks that I got to work with back in last summer. And so anyway, so the idea then that we need, when I say that nonprofits specifically, have less time and less resources and less, sort of availability for self-care, that actually belies the truth about self-care in a certain way. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, okay? Most of us, when we if we close our eyes and we think of the term self-care, right? Most of us, we're picturing something like, whether maybe it's in a sauna or a jacuzzi or like a face mask with, cucumber, chips on our little slices on our eyes, right? Or it's getting a massage, or it's getting a pedicure, or it's spending the day in nature, right? Like these are the things that we think of when we think of self-care. And 100% all of those things are a form of self-care, okay? And you don't even have to do it, giving yourself a pedicure is self-care, right? Even taking a long shower and washing your hair and taking care of your body is self-care, okay? Taking a nap is self-care. All that stuff is self-care, okay? But the problem is that all of those things that I just named, there's one thing that they all have in common, which is the thing that most of us have less and less access to, which is free time, right? Like in order to go get a manicure and a pedicure, you need to cut out an hour of your day to go do that, right? And so, again, with dwindling resources and limited funds and more responsibilities, again, whether you're in nonprofit or in the private sector, in the for-profit sector, right? It's the reality is that we're being pushed towards less available free time, less expendable time. And many of you are already there. I'm saying pushing towards. Many of you are already there. As I remember being, sort of towards the end of my my career in advertising. After advertising, I went into restaurant ownership. So that was just, there was no time at all, just zero time ever, right? None. I mean, none. But like literally 7 days a week, like working, at one point, every Friday night I would have to work 19 hours every Friday for years, right? So anyway, in every industry, in every occupation, this is a challenge. To find the time and the capacity for these ideas or for these, functional ways that we envision self-care, all right? But what if there was a different way to provide self-care? Spoiler alert, there is a different way to approach self-care. And there's a different way to attain the capacity for self-care. Because really, self-care is something that happens moment by moment. And it's not to say even in those times where we're very busy, but it's more appropriate to say especially in those times when we're very busy. Now, again, it's not, we got to get out of the image of self-care being this thing where I just, being limited to the idea of stopping everything and going to the beach or something like that, right? Or getting a manicure or a massage or going to the gym or going to the, the jacuzzi, whatever it is, right? Again, I'm not saying don't do those things. If you have the capacity and the availability and the access, yes, do those things. Take every last minute of vacation that you are entitled to, okay? That is very important also. But what I'm saying is that because many of us, and this happens to me too. I mean, I work full time doing this. I'm posting videos and podcasts every day. I have clients that I meet with throughout the day, and I am also homeschooling my children, okay, alone. I'm going through a separation with my wife. It's a whole thing that's going on. So believe me, I understand how busy life can get, and I'm feeling it with you, right? And so again, it's not to say that we don't do those sort of traditional, maybe sort of, the traditional ideas of self-care, right? The manicures, the pedicures, the gym, all that stuff, the massages, the beach vacations, the walks in nature. Do it, okay, when you can. But for those of us who can't do that, okay, it's not hopeless. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, okay? Because self-care, again, is the way that we approach our experience in a very real way. Now, the self-care that we're talking about doesn't change the circumstances at work. I mean, nor does going out for a massage either, right? The massage, like the practices I'm going to talk about here, they change the way you approach the difficulties at work. They give you a new capacity for managing those difficulties at work. Okay? So again, it's important to recognize that self-care, even if it is this sort of escaping kind of thing, walk in nature, weekend at the beach, whatever it is, that is still doing the same, because Monday morning comes and nothing changes at work, right? Nothing, work doesn't all change because you had the time to practice self-care, right? You still got the same stressors, the same pressures, the same, obligations, the same overtaxing and wearing 3 or 4 different hats, on Monday morning, no matter what you did over the weekend, right? So that's really what I'm saying here is that self-care, whether we're doing it at the beach or we're doing it within our mind and our nervous system with the practices of mindfulness and self-compassion specifically, it's doing the same thing. Right? It's recharging us from an internal state and allowing us to now change the relationship we have to the stressors in our lives and to the obligations. And it enables us just to approach those with a different sort of level of energy. Right? Now, again, please understand me, the work is the work, and that's not going to change. And that's exactly the point here, right? If I can't change that, what can I change? And that's a big question that we can all ask ourselves all the time. Because really, as we do the practices of mindfulness on a regular basis, and we really start to cultivate the wisdom that comes from these practices, just doing the practices, you don't even have to listen to a guy like me. Just doing the practices, it's going to promote a sense of awareness that becomes wisdom and intuition in a really beautiful way. And so one of the things that we come to in this intuition, right, is that we are, it matters the way that we tend to ourselves, right? And that is really the key to this, right? That when we bring a sense of caring into our moment by moment experience, right? To say that, wow, what I'm going through right now is very, very hard. Right? Just acknowledging that, just bringing our awareness to that is enough to make a shift that allows us then to, again, it's like we're cultivating more resources internally that we can sort of manage things on a different level, right? We can manage things at a different, it's hard for me to explain it. I'm at a loss for words. Look at me on the podcast at a loss for words. But anyway, the idea here is that when we think of self-care, right? If we believe that we can't care for ourselves, right, because of the pressures at work and because of everything that's going on, then we feel defeated and we feel lost. And once we feel that way, well, then the stressors become even bigger. They become even less manageable. And that's going in, obviously, the other direction. And that's what leads to chronic stress and eventually burnout. So how do we manage it? What do we do? Tell me, Art. I'm sure that's what you want to know. Well, the first step is awareness, right? The first step to any level of anything that we're doing, anything that we want to bring a change to, the first step is always bringing awareness to it. But it's a certain kind of awareness that we talk about all the time here, which is specifically non-judging awareness. But, I like to even go a little bit further than the concept of non-judging awareness. When I talk to my clients and I talk to my students and I talk to you, I would call it loving awareness, right? Because really, what is caring but a form of love, right? When we care for something, we're caring for it because we love it, because it's precious to us. It's something that matters to us, right? And so even though you might be going through some very, very difficult times at work, and you might always go through difficult times at work. Like I said, in the restaurant, I was that way for 8 years straight, literally almost 7 days a week, 6 days a week for 8 years. Right? So it's not like something that even ebbs and flows necessarily, right? And so the idea, and getting back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, is that, part of the wisdom that we cultivate through the practices of very simple practices of awareness and attention training, we come to the understanding that there's nothing that I can control that's external to my experience, right? That I can't control the amount of work that I have to do. I can't control the amount of money they pay me to do the work. I mean, sure, I have choices, like I can go work for this person because they'll pay me a little bit more, or this person because there's better benefits, or whatever that is, right? Those are choices, right? But it's not control, right? I can't wake up one morning and say, you know what? I'm not into this today. Nah, I'm not going to do it, right? I don't have that level of control. And what we realize is that extends far beyond work, right? Far beyond the office. Because really, in everything in our lives, there's nothing that we have control over. Again, we can make choices, and we can, do what we can to make choices that are beneficial and put us into a beneficial, position and stuff like that. But we can't control it, right? You can't control if somebody runs into your car. You can't control if your train is late. You can't control if your flight's canceled. You can't control if there's a blackout because of, overtaxing the electrical grid with air conditioning. But what we recognize, and the wisdom that arises through this work, is that we don't need to control that, because the one thing we can control is how we respond to all of it. Now that is tricky, right? Because when I say we can control that, it's not like we're born with this innate ability to control our response. That's far from the truth. As I talk about a lot in my, especially in the Showing Up to Life podcast, we are programmed to handle things a certain way, right? We're programmed through things like childhood trauma, but we're also programmed just by our growing up with whomever we grow up. Right? You take on the traits of the people around you. And in the first 8 years of your life, you're just soaking it all up and becoming what you see around you. And so if you grow up in a certain culture and with a certain set of values, well, then that's what you're going to grow up as, and you're not going to grow up as somebody in this other culture and this other set of values, right? So it's not to say that we all, to just say, oh, just control your reaction, right? Like that doesn't work, right? Now, it's deceiving, right? Because it feels like in a moment of calm, in a moment of clarity, like you might be experiencing now, because you're sitting down listening to a podcast. I'm hoping my voice is relaxing your nervous system, and I'm hoping that you're feeling aligned and feeling, connected. And so therefore right now, you might feel like, you know what? Yeah, I can just never get triggered again. I can just never become dysregulated again. I think that all the time about myself. Like I have that feeling like, yeah, I just hold on to this state right now. As Ram Dass says, or used to say to all his students, that when you feel like you're enlightened, spend Thanksgiving with your family. Go home for Thanksgiving, right? Because that's the thing, right? That's the part of the control that we can't control the triggers. We can't control the stressors. We can't control what our parents are going to say to us when we go home for Thanksgiving, right? And so we can't control whether we get triggered or not triggered. That's not going to happen. Eventually, something's going to come along and push you outside your, as we call it, the window of tolerance. And you're going to become dysregulated, and you're going to become stressed, and you're going to become, agitated, however you want to describe it, right? It's going to happen. It's part of life. And we cannot control that. That's why I use the word skillfulness so often. Because in order for us to get to that place where we can control our response, we need to build a set of skills. There's no way around that. Again, yes, you'll go through periods of time where, oh yeah, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling adaptable, I can really handle things, I'm good. And you might be that way for a long, long time, right? But again, especially with the pressures that we're talking about with work and wearing all the different hats as a nonprofit that's underfunded and understaffed and going through all that stuff, I think we can all agree that it's going to be short-lived, right? Like that's not going to last very long where you don't get, blindsided by something that's overwhelming to you and becomes triggering to you. On whatever level that is, however that shows up to you, because again, that's part of your programming. That's part of how you respond to stressors, right? Your capacity, your threshold for that is your programming, that you're part of your programming that you grew up with, right? So if you had, like I did, a mother who was like Chicken Little and everything was a catastrophe, you have a very high or very low stress threshold for stressors. And you have a very strong stress response like I do, okay? But yet I can tell you right now, I mean, for a variety of different reasons, right? My family and I have not taken a vacation. My kids went away for last summer for a week or so, but I personally have not gotten to take a vacation for over 5 years. Right? Over 5 years, even for the weekend. Like I have not been away. I haven't gotten a massage in that time. I did get one massage because I hurt my back in a bicycle accident. I did not get manicures and pedicures. I have not gone to a spa. I've not gotten, there's been no cucumber chips on my eyes. There's been no mud mask on my face in all that time. And certainly I would be lying if I said I never get stressed in all that time. Yes, I do feel stress and I manage it though. And I feel more, more sort of grounded and capable of managing all this stress than I have in any time before the last 5 years. And I'm 54 years old. So we're talking about 49 years, okay, before this. But now, even without those breaks, I'm good, right? Now, again, do I get triggered sometimes? Yes, I do. Do I feel stressed sometimes? A lot. But the skill is that I'm able to manage it. I'm able to, and really when I say manage it, it's not like I'm doing something to calm myself down. It's actually the opposite of that. It's being able to observe it as it's happening and to be present with it and to be flowing with it, right? To be, hey, art's in this state right now and this is the way it's going to be for the next at least few hours. And so we're just going to have to manage what we got. And not clinging to some idea that I'm supposed to not be stressed and not resisting the fact that I'm stressed, right? But instead working with it and turning it into something that can become motivating and empowering, which also includes being very honest about it too, right? Like, which includes telling people like, hey man, I'm really high strung today, so please pardon me if I say anything in our meeting that seems off the wall. It's nothing personal, something like that. Just little moments. And again, that's the way we want to look at it, as a moment by moment process, because that's the way your life works. Your life does not work in quarters of the year. Your life does not work in months. Your life doesn't work in days or weeks or even hours, even minutes, even seconds. Your life happens now, moment by moment. As you're going through, this ever-changing and ever-shifting life that you're living, it's happening moment by moment, always in the present moment. And once we cultivate an awareness of that and the skillfulness to return to that, right? Because that's the thing about mindfulness that sometimes gets a little confusing for people, right? That people feel like, well, if I'm mindful, I have to be calm all the time, right? No. Not even close. It's about returning to a place of presence. That's all it is. And sometimes the presence is very agitated. Sometimes it's very high strung. But it doesn't have to be angry. It doesn't have to be, impatient just because it's high strung. And that's where the self-care comes in, right? That as we're experiencing these moments, as we bring a caring and loving awareness into our experience, it opens us up to things like self-kindness and self-compassion, which then allow us to manage the moment-by-moment stress. Roll with it. As John Kabat-Zinn says, we can't stop the waves, but we can learn how to surf. And that's what these skills are all about. All right. So I'm going to be doing a few of these in the next few Casual Fridays. We're going to be exploring a lot of this specifically for nonprofits. So if any of you know any people in nonprofits, please share this link with them, because I want them to hear the next few episodes. I have about 8 different weekly episodes lined up, sort of sketched out, and I'm gonna different topics and stuff. And ultimately, I hope to open up a couple of workshops for people who are struggling in nonprofits or in profit. I mean, I'm not limiting anything, but we're going to design it specifically for that really, understaffed, under-resourced, underfunded, kind of reality that exists for the nonprofit sector. And there's many other attributes of nonprofit work that are specific to nonprofits. So I'm going to be exploring a lot of these. And so if you know anybody who is in any field in the nonprofit sector, please send them these links, okay? Really do, because I'm hoping to deliver some very important information that could be truly, helpful is not even the word, right? It could be life-saving. It could be career-saving too, because I'll tell you one thing, whether you're talking nonprofit or for-profit, people leave jobs because of what we're talking about. Right? They leave careers because I'm one of them, right? If I knew these practices 15 years ago, right? My gosh, the comfortable life I might be living right now as an advertising executive, right? And I'm not regretting. I love my life. I'm happy the way things worked out. But I'm just saying that I left that career because I couldn't take it anymore. I was burnt out. I was overwhelmed. I was done. I couldn't do it. And of course, I mean, missing an advertising career is like not a big deal, right? But if you're working for a for-profit, you're doing some really important work, and you're helping people on a really important level. And so that's not something you want to give up just because it's stressful, right? If you can learn ways to deal with the stress so that you don't have to. And that's what we're doing these next few weeks here, right? And again, hopefully this culminates in a program and a workshop that we can all really interact and get into this and really make some very, very important changes. And one of the things we're going to be talking about, maybe even next week, I have to check my list, that it's important to understand that the more self-care you can provide yourself and you can cultivate for yourself, the more you're going to be able to serve the people you're here to serve. And that's why you wake up every morning. That's why you put on your shoes and you go to work, right? To help people. And that's specific to the nonprofit sector, right? Because most people in the nonprofit are not in it for the money. They're in it for the impact that they're making. And so this cultivation of the skills of self-care enables you to make a stronger impact and a more intentional impact in a very important way. All right. I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope it was helpful. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me, art@artburnscoaching.com. I answer every single email that comes into that, which I don't know if you heard that ding, but somebody just emailed me now. So I'm going to go check it and I'm going to reply. And I hope you all enjoyed this. And I'll be back again next week with another Casual Fridays podcast. But also watch out for my Showing Up to Life podcast that I sprinkle in throughout the week in between these Fridays. All right. Anyway, thanks again, folks. I wish you well, and I'll be back again soon. Take care.